Making all these Sonic videos lately has me feeling so nostalgic and thinking about all the great games that I played as a kid. With all the nostalgic flashbacks to my 10-year-old self, I dusted off my old GameCube. Kind of. I just bought it on the Xbox Live Game Store, but I dusted it off in my mind and booted up one of my favorite games, Sonic Adventure 2, to see if it still holds up as well as it does in my memory with a retrospective review of the game. And if you're asking, why Sonic Adventure 2, not Sonic Adventure 1 first? I played SA2 as a kid, first on the GameCube and Sonic Adventure when it was later ported to the GameCube, so SA2 just has way more nostalgia value for me. And look, this is a very polarizing game, with either a you loved it or you hated it reaction out there. But here's my goal with this retrospective. I'm going to highlight some of the things that made this game feel so special to me as a kid, and see if they hold up, while also addressing some critiques I know the Sonic community has. But beyond that, I know there's a bunch of younger Sonic fans who follow my channel, and I want to identify some of my favorite parts of the game for a title I feel was a part of the golden era of Sonic. And with that, let's take a look back at Sonic Adventure 2. Starting from the moment you boot up the game, the most memorable part of this game for so many people is the music. With a stellar soundtrack written and produced by Crush 40, like Sonic Adventure before it, the soundtrack has some of the most memorable, well-written songs for a video game in history. For context, back in the day, most games had kinda iffy music soundtracks. Most video games either couldn't support a full soundtrack because the game was too big to support the files, or the music they got was just really bad licensed music that you never wanted to listen to again. That was a huge area where Sonic Adventure 2 stood out. From a stellar theme with Live and Learn to the opening of the first level of City Escape, Sonic Adventure 2 was a Sonic game that stood out in its era. The music had a consistency, with the edgy rock you'd hear in the Sonic levels and the catchy raps you'd find in the Knuckles levels. And as a kid, I don't know how many times I'd find myself rapping the Pumpkin Hill song with my friends. Not only was the music good, but the songs also complemented every level and mission with a contextualization of where you are in the story. Then, there was the story itself. For a kid who grew up during the golden age of Dragon Ball Z, I loved the mythos that came with that anime and the character conflicts that persisted. No character is definitively evil, just characters who are, generally speaking, misunderstood. I mean, in DBZ, Vegeta goes from trying to kill Goku at the beginning of the series to becoming one of his best friends. Likewise, Sega seemed to adopt some of those same story-building characteristics when crafting Sonic Adventure 2. You see Sonic as the Goku-like, carefree character who is most concerned with saving the world and protecting his friends, yet on the dark story side, you can't help but have a certain level of empathy towards Shadow. He isn't a character that's just one-dimensionally evil. He has a damaged past where he was taken advantage of and exploited by humans. He lost Maria, the only person he ever truly loved and wanted vengeance. And then, at the end of all this, you see Sonic and Shadow put aside their differences to determine they have more in common than they actually realize. So they team up to do a chaos control to save the space colony arc and subsequently the world. In previous games like Sonic CD and Sonic Adventure, you had far more linear plot developments. Eggman wants to take over the world, our heroes have to stop him, but in Sonic Adventure 2, you finally have one of the first games where they try to add a certain level of depth and backstory to these characters. I'm not trying to say SA1 didn't. I know they had a mythos behind the story of Chaos, Tikal, and the Chow, but that was a largely tertiary story that didn't really involve our main characters. In SA2, we see Shadow make for being such a great character, not because he's trying to take over the world, but because he isn't explicitly all evil. He has a soft side to him, just yearning to come free. You can see it in his mutual respect for Sonic, whereas Chaos didn't talk and Metal Sonic was a robot copy whose only goal was to kill Sonic. I mean, just check out how emotional this scene is.
Besides, there's no way to save anyone.
There has to be! I know that people fight over the most trivial things. Some people may be selfish, like the professor said. But they're basically good if they try their best and never give up on their wishes. They always have a reason to be happy. That's why you should help them out. Saving them is a good thing. Shadow, I beg you, please do it for them. Give them a chance.
For an era in gaming that typically wasn't defined by super immersive gameplay, this was a title that really tried to push bounds for storytelling in the video game genre. And then there's the game mechanics. And I know I might get a little pushback on this one, as I'll be the first to acknowledge the game definitely has some camera control problems where it can be hard to see things, but let's look at the core mechanics. It was games like this and their level building that I feel built the way for bigger open world games. And you might be asking, but Luke, this isn't an open world game. To which I say you're right. However, when you play levels like Final Rush, there is a linear progression to that level, but you are always treated to shortcuts and alternate routes on how you want to complete the level. Back in the day, you didn't used to see that level of freedom in a video game, especially in the way they integrated those elements of freedom into a linear level design. But beyond the freedom, there's just the constant churning adrenaline that rushes through when you go through all these diverse and interesting levels. I don't think there's one level that's truly forgettable. You start the game jumping out of an airplane on a snowboard to board down the streets of San Francisco, only to then be chased by an unbelievably large truck that, in retrospect, doesn't really make any sense, provided it's like 6 stories tall. I mean, how do you even drive a 6-story tall truck? You need an elevator, get in the cab or whatever, it's crazy. But anyway, you go from that level to the next Sonic level, which is Metal Harbor, where you run all over this military base with F-15s flying all over, trying to shoot you down as you try to escape the military. Then as you get to the end, you grab onto a rocket ship, jump off, and snowboard down to the finish line at the end point. I mean, I can keep going on and on, but this was a game that, as a kid, gives you a visceral sense of urgency. Whether it's the 6-story truck or trying to get out of the jungle and white jungle before the island explodes, adds a level of tension and urgency built into the game's story, and it really helps you invest in the stakes. Plus, back to the mechanics, there's nothing more fun than the feeling you get running around as Sonic, and you have the same levels of speed as something like a car. Running off ramps and doing crazy flips, it's a thrill ride to get to play as a unique character who constantly defies physics. And it wasn't just Sonic. You got to glide around as Knuckles, searching for the Master Emerald pieces in Pumpkin Hills. You got to traverse the Space Colony arc, beating up robots left and right. And perhaps, in retrospect, the Tails Eggman levels may have been some of the weakest, but they were still fun. They were clunky and relatively slow paced, but they added a bit of different dimension to the game. Plus, it was the first time you ever got to play as Eggman in a video game. So, as a kid, it was a little entertaining to get to feel like you're participating in the dark side of a video game for once. As far as the graphics, I mean, it's fairly obvious they don't really hold up by today's standards. You can see the individual pixels in every model, which is kind of nuts when you think about the kind of character models we see today. Nonetheless, I think this was a game that had great graphics for its time. The game came out in 2001, so we're talking about a game that came out the same year as this. I mean, GTA 3 was supposed to be the game with the most graphical prowess of its time. And you can see by comparison, Sega and the Sonic team really managed to put out something that leveraged all of the power of the Dreamcast and Nintendo GameCube. Plus, the cutscenes were something relatively unique to video games at the time. It was very rare to see cutscenes with professionally rendered CGI scenes, such as when Eggman blows up the moon with the Arc Colony Eclipse Cannon. Halo was one of the most popular games of the time, and often perceived as the most graphically sophisticated game of that time, and not even that had high-end CGI cutscenes to pull from. All their cutscenes just leveraged the game character models. Sonic Adventure 2 debuted during a time when the Dreamcast was on its last legs, so the team at Sega really wanted to deliver something special for their longtime fans, and they really nailed it on the head by including a type of cutscene that had generally not been seen in video games before this period. And then there's the Chow Garden, what I feel is the most underrated, best part of the game. For a game with such an intricate story, you could spend hours in the Chow Garden participating in a world that felt like a full experience entirely separate from the main game. You get these Chow, and you can do all sorts of things with them. You can train them, you can race them. If you treat them poorly and throw them against the rocks like an evil person, they can evolve into Dark Chows. If you treat them well, they can evolve into Hero Chows. There's rare Chows, there's shiny Chows. You can teach the Chows to fly. The Chows can breed with each other. You can get them toys to interact. Since 2001 and the Chow Garden, I don't think I've ever seen a minigame that was so extensively developed and well implemented that it's its own Pokemon-esque experience entirely outside normal gameplay. If Sonic Team sees this, please consider reintroducing Chow Garden or some version of it into the next Sonic game. It'd be incredible. In review, Sonic Adventure 2 certainly holds up. It's a game that's relatively short by today's standards. I beat it in probably 7 hours, but those 7 hours all deliver a great experience that still holds up almost 2 decades later. I know Sonic Team has been trying to get their act together with the more recent Sonic games, but Sonic Adventure era was a great era for the franchise. I know they want to appease all the Sonic fans, but I think they could make a great new Sonic game if they come back and look at all the many things that make the Sonic Adventure series such a thrill to play. And I hope they consider getting back to the roots of what made Sonic great with the success of the Sonic movie. Anyway, that's my review. Feeling rather nostalgic lately, so if there are any old school games you'd like me to check out, hit me up and I'd love to replay them for the first time in a long time. Let me know what you'd like to see in the comments, and as always, if you like this video, be sure to subscribe to my channel. Until next time, Luke signing off.